Tell you a quick story before I go about my last real job. I worked for a large defense contractor here. I won't tell you the name of it because that would be indiscreet. I can tell you that it rhymed with Bow and Aerospace. Yeah. And they sold a lot of planes. Well, I mentioned when I said, is that vague enough? Is that okay? Well, when I came out of high school, I went to work in radio, stayed there for a couple of years, and went to work for this company. And again, I was blessed with the ability to draw. God knew He had to give me something to work with because I was on my own there. And so I went to work for this company, and I was always the squeaky wheel. You know, I had had businesses since I was a little kid. My first business was when I was about 7 years old, selling watermelons out of a wagon. Watermelons that I'd stolen from my father's garden. I also call that the time I took a beating in the produce business. But I went to work for this company, and it was a great company, don't get me wrong. They afforded me a lot of opportunities, but I was always the guy trying to come up with, ways to make things better, ways to make things work, ways to save money. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was an intrapreneur. I was also the most dedicated employee this company ever had. I loved it. I had gotten my good job. When you're poor, that's what they drive into you. You get out of high school, you find a good job, and you hang on to it for dear life. I had found my good job. I would be there today if things had worked out. I was the one. I worked all the overtime. I did everything they wanted. And every now and then I would walk into my boss's office with some brilliant idea that I had come up with. I was the squeaky wheel. I was the entrepreneur. And over the 11 years that I was there, most of my supervisors understood how I operated. And they didn't mind. I would go in, hey, let me tell you this great idea I've got. And they would implement it or they would not. And that wasn't the point. Just the fact that they would listen to me meant the world to me. Because I didn't want a pat on the back. I didn't need another Employee of the Month certificate. I was Employee of the Month like 20 times. Usually in the winter because you got to park by the door. Okay? But I just wanted to be listened to. And so I was assigned to another group, and I went to work for a guy named Jim. If it were not for Jim, I would not be here today. Because Jim was a genius. He was brilliant in the art of reverse motivation. Okay? I would go into Jim's office and I would say, hey, Jim, let me tell you this idea. And he, there for a while, he would listen. He would, he'd steeple his fingers and he'd close his eyes and he would do this. And it took me a couple of times to realize he wasn't listening. He was going to sleep. Okay? And so once I walked into Jim's office and I said, Jim, let me tell you what I got. I got a great idea. He goes, look, Knox, just stop. Just stop. He said, you're a great employee and everything, but, all these ideas really aren't necessary. This company has been going for years without you. It'll be going years after you're gone. Just do your job. Do you need a copy of your job description? Just do what's on that paper. Do what your title says you should do. Don't worry about all this other stuff. I appreciate it, but, Knox, you think too much. Now, this was a new wrinkle in the Knox fabric because I had been accused of not thinking enough. My wife accuses me to this day of not thinking at all. I had never been accused of thinking too much. And to be honest with you, I didn't know how to respond. I was a young kid. I was in my mid-20s, and I have my boss here telling me that I think too much. And so I just tucked my tail between my legs and left his office. And as I was walking down that hallway back to my office, I just kept thinking, you think too much. And the thing about it was, telling me not to think was like telling me not to breathe. I have 1,000 voices in my head. I have so many voices in my head, they hold conventions twice a year and ask me to speak. Okay? So the more I thought, I'm like, I can't stop thinking. I think too much. I think maybe I'm not suited to work for Jim. I think maybe I'm not suited for this corporate career track. I think maybe I need to look at starting my own business. And that's what I did. I went home that day and talked to my wife. I said, I think I'm going to start my own business. And so I started what would eventually become my first business, which was an internet design company. And within 6 months, I was making enough that paralleled my salary at this company. So I went into Jim one day. It was on a Monday morning. And I sat down, and he's like, oh, man, not again. No, I don't want to hear it. And I said, Jim, hey, don't worry. I'm not here to pitch you an idea. I'm just here to let you know that I'm going to start my own business. Please take this as my 2-week notice. And he looked at me like I was stupid. And he goes, man, I think you're crazy. And I said, well, Jim, you think too much.